Welcome to a brand new week. Welcome to the beginning of the future because it has arrived. Welcome to Monday. Welcome to game day. The Montreal Canadiens have 2 games left to go. We're calling this the Monday clinch party at home against Chicago, which actually, in my opinion, falls secondary to the number one priority. The Ivan Demidov show has arrived. It arrived in a big way. Let's talk to the man who broke the story and has had blanket coverage of the Ivan Demidov storyline since it broke last week. Marco D'Amico, are we ready for Ivan Demidov Palooza, Ivan Demidov debut day?
I think everybody's happy for Ivan Demidov Day.
It's the day that fans have been much highly anticipated to watch the debut of this 19-year-old. Has there been enough time between his touchdown in Toronto and his arrival with the team where he's practicing with the spare players in Arbor Jacki primarily and others? Enough time in between those days to get him into live fire on Monday night against Chicago, in your opinion?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think you look at a player like him and you just got to give, you got to give him the run. You got to give him the ability to go with it. You got to give him, the ability to, show what he can do. And I think the Canadiens are going to give him rope. I don't think they're going to give him all the rope, but they're going to give him rope.
What's his line look like today? Like, what's his line like? Let's get the fan base ready for his debut today, and what's a reasonable approach to who we think he plays with, and the type of minutes we're expected to see tonight in Chicago. How do you think they break him into the NHL?
I wouldn't be surprised if he rotated on certain lines. I think you may see him with Jake Evans and Yoel Armia to, in case of defensive situations. I wouldn't be surprised if, he played with, something more along the lines of a New Hook and Line A. Definitely could see him starting on the second power play wave. You don't want to move anybody out of that first spot right off the bat. Although I think his spot is eventually Juraj Slafkovsky's to lose in terms of who he would replace. But I think, when you have a guy like that with this talent, you have a guy, that has the ability to take over shifts when given time and space. It's just a question of him being, how do I say this? It's being given the leash to make that kind of a move and to get acclimatized. And, ultimately at the end of the day, this is all just to get him used to it. The Canadiens want to see what he can do right now so that he's ready for the playoffs.
Like, what type of player are we talking about here? For those that, aren't in the weeds on the KHL game tape, what they know is that Ivan Demidov has talent that the Montreal Canadiens of a certain demographic haven't seen a player or anticipated a player's arrival with the skill set that Demidov brings. What can you talk to us about as it relates to what Demidov does well and what he needs to maybe work on to sharpen some of those skills? But let's start with the positive. His area of strength, what makes him so dynamic?
I think he's just got elite hockey sense. I think that he can attack open space, like he can create open space. And he's able to identify areas where he can, take advantage of weakness, be it in coverage or be it just an overall skill of competition.
Right.
He's got great hands. His stick handling ability is second to none in terms of, I don't think the youngins will get this reference, but he could stick handle in a phone booth. Right. And only folks like Sean and above will get that reference.
Daddy, what's a phone booth?
Exactly. Yeah. It's that weird Bell Canada thing that you see on the side of the highway. No one goes in there anymore. Anyway, all this to say, never go in there. All this to say, he can dangle in a very small space, and he can make room for himself. He can make those around him better. He's a fantastic playmaker, sees the ice quite well, but I would not underrate his shot. He has very strong shooting ability, and the way that he shoots is very varied. So it's not always the same kind of shot. He can do the pull away toe drag shot, like he can do a sweeping wrist shot. Very strong one-timer as well. Just an all-around solid offensive player.
And so Chicago tonight at the Bell Center, any concern that the Canadiens failed to clinch when they had the opportunity? They control their own destiny type of narrative. where they couldn't get it done against Ottawa. Ottawa brought it and then some, and then losing a scoreless game in overtime on a Mitch Marner OT winner on a Saturday night in front of a very, very flat arena where the Maple Leafs call home. That was, anyways, that's on you, Toronto. Walk me through what you think about the strengths there that Chicago brings, and then also the fact that Montreal couldn't clinch, and they going into Chicago, it's a Monday clinch party today. Any red flags that popped up over the last two games going into tonight?
Well, I'm pretty sure the game's in Montreal.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, with Chicago coming in, I mean, Chicago's got nothing really to play for, but they've upset a couple of teams over the last little bit that many didn't give them a chance against. So not exactly out of the realm of possibility in terms of seeing them put up a fight against the Canadiens. But I think, like tomorrow, like when all is said and done, I think the Canadiens will have started off that game and just think to themselves, like, they've smelled the blood in the water, because it's not a very confident team. Spencer Knight is playing well, but could be sometimes overwhelmed by some defense. They got a really young defense core now that Seth Jones is gone.
Right.
So like there's opportunity for the Canadiens to take advantage. And I could see them being utterly aggressive. So loading up the top two lines may be exactly what it takes. And then kind of having that checking line that'll drive them crazy along the boards, I just think is a recipe for a solid win for the Canadiens. But again, you have to seize the opportunity, because a win in Chicago and you're in. Or a win against Chicago and you're in.
Correct. And Canadian fans hoping the trend that Chicago has been on doesn't hold true tonight at 7:00 when Chicago is here. They beat Pittsburgh, lost to Pittsburgh. Beat Boston, lost to Winnipeg. So if the trend holds, Chicago's gearing up. But I feel confidently about this Canadiens team on home ice tonight, locking down that playoff spot. Now, when we talk about the positives there, as you alluded to earlier about Ivan Demidov, the moves, the sweeping shot, what about what he needs to work on that the opposition, like tonight, is going to try to take advantage of in Demidov's game? Again, he's 19 years old, a kid making his debut in the NHL. It's going to take a second. What does he have to work on as far as you're concerned?
Timing. That's the basic thing, is timing. The speed in the NHL is always a big issue. Before, it also used to be rink size, right? So, in the last 2 years, the KHL has moved most of their rinks to NHL ice to ease the transition and kind of create this universal kind of rink. We'll see. I think eventually the IIHF will do the same. And in so doing so, like, he's already used to the amount of time and space that he had in the KHL. The space is the same, but the speed of the game is a different story in the NHL. And so a team like Chicago, seeing him come in, is going to want to forecheck the holy Jesus out of him and make sure that he has even less time than normal to make plays, because if you give him any time or space, he will burn you. And this is a young defensive core that relies heavily on its veterans. So I would expect that, the Canadiens, and this is probably why they want to play him against Chicago, is because they have the last change. They can decide where he plays and who he plays against or what he matches up against. But if I'm Chicago, it doesn't matter who's on the ice, I'm going to spend a lot of time covering a guy like Ivan Demidov. And you know who may be taking advantage of something like that? Patrick Laine is going to have a whole lot more space because of it.
Well, is outside of Lane Hudson, who else is salivating at Ivan Demidov's arrival? Ivan Demidov getting NHL reps in here. Lane Hudson has been the most vocal as far as I'm concerned, watching highlights, talking to Montembeault about the highlights he's seen. Skill set is through the roof. I mean, Lane Hudson has been on the Ivan Demidov watch for a second. Who else on this team do you think can't wait for Demidov to mature, to get that level of comfort where he knows he belongs psychologically in the NHL?
Nick Suzuki.
Hey, now, what does it do for Suzuki?
I mean, for Nick Suzuki, first of all, if you have a line driver on another line than yours, then it creates a very difficult situation for the opposition to match up. Right now, every single team that walks into the Bell Center or that receives the Montreal Canadiens knows, put your best up against the Suzuki line, and more often than not, you're going to limit them to less than a goal or two per game if you're able to shut down the Suzuki line. And I think we saw that, against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I think, we saw that with the Ottawa Senators. The top line scored a goal. And it was off that Suzuki goal from the Slavkovsky feed. But other than that, shut down pretty solid. And that team, that line is tired just from the overutilization. I think Nick Suzuki's been playing on average 20, 21 minutes a game.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful. You really got to be careful with that. And when you're a player like Nick Suzuki, who's had to put this team on his back basically since he's gotten here, having a guy on another line that's going to attract the ire and attention of the opposition will make it so that the matchups will be more varied. You'll have an easier time in the offensive zone. It'll be less impact. It'll be less pressure, but also less wear and tear on you because they're going to be distracted and trying to figure out what's going. And where this is really going to help Nick Suzuki is going to be when they have sustained offensive zone pressure and they're going to be able to interchange their players on the fly and extend that pressure and really take advantage of tired players on the ice. Something you haven't been able to see the Canadiens ever do during this rebuild because they never had the offensive quality of depth to be able to do that. Bringing in a guy like Demidov can elevate guys like Newhook, can elevate a guy like Laine, and then they can come in and really take advantage and open up the ice.
You said something very interesting there when you talked about how it helps Suzuki and then you drop line driver. It's very rare we talk about a winger that's a line driver. Is that fair to say? There aren't many of those guys, right? Like we often attribute line driving to centermen.
Right, but I think you're seeing more and more a push for wingers being line drivers. You know, Alex Ovechkin, we think back to Mario Lemieux. Mario Lemieux is a great line driver. You know, you think of Mike Bossy back in the day, great line driver. May he rest in peace. And, you know, more modern day, you know, Nikita Kucherov is a line driver. Kirill Kaprizov is a line driver. Mitch Marner is a line driver. These are guys that can be wingers, but that can impact all three zones at all times. And I feel like that's the kind of player that Ivan Demidov can become.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I know you got Kirill Kaprizov on the brain there. I mean, that's the guy we talk about, right? I mean,
that's the comp.
That's it, right? I mean, get ready. Ivan Demidov and his debut live from the Bell Center against the Chicago Blackhawks. Don't forget, you can support the Sean Starr Show by supporting our sponsors like Silver Paw Dog, silverpawdog.com. It's their everything pet warehouse sale event, up to 80% off jackets, collars, raincoats, sweaters, treats and toys, beds and supplements. 3237 Boulevard des Sources. So that's Gallery des Sources. It's their everything pet warehouse sale event, May 2nd to May 4th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Click the link in the pinned comment of this video for your chance to win $200 to spend at Silver Paw Dog. Marco, excited for what's to come and the push towards the playoffs. Unbelievable as always. Congratulations on the Ivan Demidov story, and let's keep pushing forward. It's going to be an exciting spring into the summer. Thanks as always, Marco.
Always a pleasure, guys. Have a good one.